What if I told you? The greatest empire in human history did not collapse because of one war, not because of one mistake, but because of the slow and invisible instruction that was happening from the undefeated. Because the truth is, Rome was no undefeated. Rome destroyed itself. At its peak, Rome was untouchable. Powerful armies, massive wealth, unmatched influence. It controlled the known world, from the cold lands of Europe to the burning sands of Africa, to the rich cities of the East. Rome was everywhere. But here's the dark twist. The bigger Rome became, the harder it became to control. And that was the beginning of the end. Because power, when it grows too fast, becomes a problem. Rome had expanded too much. Its borders were too large, its enemies too many, its armies too stretched. Imagine trying to control half the world, without modern technology, without instant communication. Everything became slower. Decisions took time, orders took weeks, and sometimes it was already too late. Faraway provinces began to feel disconnected from Rome. Governors started acting like kings. Armies became independent, and loyalty started to break because Roman soldiers were no longer loyal to Rome. They were loyal to their generals, and that was dangerous, because when power shifts from a nation to individuals, collapse is only a matter of time. Soon Rome faced its worst nightmare: civil wars. Not enemies from outside, but enemies from within. Roman against Roman, brother against brother, general against general. Cities burned, armies clashed, and the empire started bleeding from the inside. But that was not the only problem, because while Rome was busy fighting itself, something even more dangerous was rising at its borders. The barbarians, tribes from the north, strong, fearless, and hungry for power. Groups like the Goths, the Vandals, the Huns, they had been watching Rome for years, waiting, and now they saw weakness, and weakness invites attack. At first, Rome tried to control them. It allowed some tribes to enter the empire as allies, as soldiers, as settlers. But this decision would backfire, because these tribes did not think like Romans. They did not follow Roman rules, and when pressure increased, they turned against Rome. One of the most shocking moments in Roman history was the sack of Rome. Yes, the city that ruled the world was invaded, attacked, destroyed by the Goths. For the first time in centuries, Rome was not safe. Imagine the shock, the fear, the panic. If Rome could fall, then nothing was untouchable. And that was just the beginning, because soon more attacks came, more invasions, more destruction. The empire was cracking from every side. But here's where it gets even darker, because Rome still had a chance to survive. It still had resources. It still had armies. But it had lost something more important: leadership. Weak emperors took control. Men who cared more about power than stability. Men who could not handle the pressure. Corruption spread everywhere. Government officials took bribes. Taxes increased. The rich got richer and the poor became desperate. People lost faith in Rome. And when people stop believing, an empire cannot survive. Because Rome was not just built on power, it was built on trust, and that trust was gone. Meanwhile, the economy was collapsing. Trade slowed down, money lost value, food became expensive, jobs disappeared, and hunger started to spread. Cities that were once full of life became places of struggle. Crime increased, violence grew, and the system started breaking apart. Even the military, the strongest part of Rome, was weakening. Soldiers were no longer disciplined. They were no longer loyal. They were no longer Roman. Many were foreign mercenaries fighting for money, not for Rome. And when the time came to defend the empire, they did not fight with the same spirit. Because you cannot defend something you do not believe in. Then came the final phase, the slow death of the Western Roman Empire. In 476 AD, a young emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was removed from power, not by a great army, not by a powerful king, but by a barbarian leader. Just like that, the Western Roman Empire was gone. No massive explosion, no final battle, just silence. The greatest empire in the West disappeared, and the world was never the same again. But wait, because this is not the end of the story. Because even though Rome fell, it never truly died. Its ideas, its systems, its influence are still alive today. What if I told you Rome did not truly die in 476 AD? Because even after the fall, Rome was still alive, not as an empire, but as an idea. Because the truth is, you cannot destroy something that has already changed the world. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the world did not celebrate. It collapsed into chaos. Because Rome was not just a power, it was a system, a structure that held everything together. And when that structure broke, everything fell apart. Trade routes disappeared, cities became empty, knowledge was lost, and Europe entered a dark age. For centuries, progress slowed down. Civilization took a step back because Rome had been carrying the weight of the world. But here's the twist. While the West fell, the East survived. Because the Roman Empire was not completely gone. It continued as the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire. And this empire would survive for another 1,000 years. Yes, 1,000 years after Rome fell. Think about that. While the West was struggling, the East was thriving, centered in the city of Constantinople, a city that became the new Rome. Powerful walls, strong economy, strategic location. It was almost impossible to conquer. For centuries it stood strong, protecting Roman knowledge, Roman law, Roman culture. But even this would not last forever, because in 1453 Constantinople finally fell, and with it, the last remains of the Roman Empire disappeared. But here's the crazy part. Even after 2,000 years, Rome still exists, not as a city alone, but as a legacy. Because look around you right now. The world you live in is still influenced by Rome. The laws you follow are inspired by Roman law. The roads you travel follow Roman design. The governments you see use systems created by Rome. Even the idea of a republic came from Rome. This means Rome never really fell. It transformed, it evolved, it became the foundation of the modern world. But now, here's the most important question. Why did Rome fall? Because this is where the real lesson is. Rome did not fall because it was weak. It fell because it stopped being strong in the right way. It lost discipline, it lost unity, it lost purpose, and slowly it lost control. Because strength is not just about power, it's about balance, and Rome lost that balance. Too much expansion, too much greed, too much corruption, and not enough control. And that destroyed everything. Now think about this. Could the same thing happen again? Could a powerful civilization today follow the same path without even realizing it? Because history does not repeat exactly, but it rhymes. And the rise and fall of Rome is not just a story of the past, it is a warning for the future. Because every empire, no matter how strong, has a breaking point. And the moment it forgets what made it powerful, that is the moment it starts to fall. Rome took centuries to rise, but only moments to collapse. And that is the most dangerous truth of all. Because greatness is not permanent, power is not eternal, and history never forgives weakness. So the next time you see the ruins of Rome, remember this: you are not just looking at the past, you are looking at a warning, a message written in stone for every civilization that comes after. Rise, power, and fall. This is the cycle of every empire, and Rome was just the greatest example of all. What if I told you Rome did not just leave behind ruins, it left behind a blueprint, a pattern, a system that every powerful civilization follows without even knowing it? Because Rome was not unique, it was predictable. And that is what makes this story terrifying. Because everything that happened to Rome can happen again, right now. In the modern world, let me show you something step by step. First, a small beginning, weak, ignored, struggling, just like Rome at the start. Then growth, aggressive, unstoppable, expansion of power, expansion of influence. Everything starts going right. People celebrate. Confidence turns into pride, and pride it turns into overconfidence. Then comes the shift, slow, silent, dangerous. Leaders start changing, values start weakening, discipline starts fading, but no one notices. Because on the surface everything still looks strong. The buildings are still standing, the armies are still powerful, the economy still looks stable, but inside cracks begin to form, small at first, almost invisible, but growing every single day. And then corruption begins. Greed takes over. Power becomes more important than purpose. Leaders stop serving the people and start serving themselves. Sound familiar? Because this is exactly what happened to Rome. And then division. People stop agreeing. Groups start fighting, not for survival, but for control. The nation starts fighting itself, just like Rome did. And while all this is happening, something else is growing outside. Watching, waiting, new powers, new threats, stronger, hungrier, more focused. And they are learning from the empire, just like Rome learned from others. And then, the final stage, weakness. Not on the outside, but on the inside. Because by now, the empire looks strong, but feels weak. And that is the most dangerous position any civilization can be in. Because when you look strong, but are actually weak, that is when the fall becomes inevitable. Rome did not fall in one day. It fell long before the final collapse. The moment it lost discipline, it started falling. The moment it lost unity, it started falling. The moment it forgot who it was, it started falling. And by the time the world realized it, it was already too late. Now, here's the question. What if we are living in that same moment? What if, right now, somewhere in the world a civilization is at its peak, but already beginning to fall? Would we even notice? Or would we do exactly what the Romans did? Ignore the signs until everything falls apart. Because history does not warn loudly, it whispers, and only those who listen understand. Rome was not just a story, it was a lesson, a warning, a mirror, showing us what happens when power is not controlled, when growth is not balanced, when strength is taken for granted. Because at the end of the day, Rome was not destroyed by its enemies. It was destroyed by its own success, and that is the most dangerous thing any empire can ever experience. Success without limits, power without control, growth without direction. Because when you reach the top, there is only one direction left, down. And Rome fell hard, but its fall was not the end. It was a beginning of a new world built on the remains of the old one. And today, you are living in that world, a world shaped by Rome, guided by Rome, influenced by Rome, even if you do not realize it. So the next time you hear the name Rome, do not just think of an empire. Think of a warning. Think of a pattern. Think of a question that still remains unanswered. Who will be the next Rome? And more importantly, are we already watching it happen?